Good morning and a very warm welcome to KTN News Weekend Express with me, Brenda Zedaradido, hoping that your Sunday so far is good despite, the challenge that the country is facing, not only Kenya but the entire world when it comes to fighting COVID-19. And 126 cases have so far been confirmed in the country, 4 deaths and 4 recoveries. I mean, the recoveries sounds as a good news to the country. We are hopeful that these numbers will not go any higher than what we are seeing right now. This morning, we have a lot lined up for you here on a KTN News Weekend Express, and I'll begin with the newspaper. We need to review our newspapers in terms of what is making the headlines, and I have the Standard newspaper and the Nation newspaper, but I'll begin with the Standard newspaper. And this morning, our top story actually on the Standard newspaper is about the ODM leader Raila Odinga calling on Kenyans to rally together in the fight against COVID-19. And the headline is Raila's war cry. The country, and not only Kenya, but the entire world, has termed COVID-19 as a war that needs to be won by everybody, from the young to the old in the society. And Raila is calling Kenyans to work together in terms of fighting this war. And that story is on page 7 of the Standard newspaper. So I'd like us to turn to page 7 of the Standard newspaper. And ODM leader Raila Odinga says we can stop this virus if we stand strong. He goes ahead to give an example of previous cases that have happened in the country, the trying challenges that we've witnessed as a country, right from terrorist attacks that Kenyans always rally together to help the people who've been affected. So he translates that into this war on COVID-19. Let me just quote what he says. I have known you for long. He says he's known Kenyans for long. I know your strong faith and belief in friends, family, social networks and acquaintances. I know your determination, kindness and humor, even in grim situations. That he wrote on his social media account in this letter that he posted on his various social media accounts. Remember that ODM leader Raila Odinga has, has not actually spoken about this COVID-19. And the first time he talked about COVID-19 is when the government reported the first case. And after that, we've not heard from him. And that is why yesterday he took his time to pen a long letter, to Kenyans, just telling them on how to fight this coronavirus. And he directly spoke to the young people of the society, because the Kenyan, because Kenya has a high number of young people, and that's why he was appealing to the youth, telling them that they are the most important people in the society when it comes to this fight against coronavirus. And it's not only Raila Odinga who's talking about young people. Yesterday, we also had from the CL, that is Mutahi Kagwe, urging the young people to be at the front line when it comes to fighting coronavirus, telling them that if they don't take care of the society, then they'll end up burying the old, they'll end up burying their own children. He said this even as there were claims that about 6,000 young people were planning to have a meeting in Nairobi. So that is why he also told them to come out and wash the streets of Nairobi, just as a way of trying to keep our environment safe. So if you want to know more of what the ODM leader Raila Odinga talked about, get a copy of the Standard newspaper. It is on page 7. You'll get all that he had to tell Kenyans when it comes to the fight against COVID-19. But of the most important in the Standard newspaper is how our politicians have been treating COVID-19, something that has angered, the CS for Health, after one of the members of parliament posted, on his social media account on Twitter, saying that, 7,000 people have been affected by COVID-19. That is something that the CS came out to say that is not true, and that politicians should stop playing politics, with matters to do with COVID-19. And on Standard newspaper, page 19, we have all that story for you. And the headline is about noisy politicians go mute as virus bites. And it has been written that during the BBI, the Building Bridges Initiative campaign rallies that were going on in the past before the first COVID-19 was reported in the case, we saw lawmakers coming out to defend the BBI campaign rallies and the BBI report that has been a debate in the country. And after the first case was reported in the country, the vocal politicians decided to go mute. And that is why Kenyans are asking, where are our political leaders when we need them the most? Some of them are saying that they're carrying out civic education on the ground, just, educating their constituents, their electorates about COVID-19, how they need to keep safe in terms of washing their hands, sanitizing, keeping a distance, using disposable tissues or handkerchief when they're about to sneeze or cough. And so that is the reason as to why some of them are saying they're not speaking. But then not the most important thing that came to the public, limelight is when one of the members of parliament, as I've told you earlier, went on his social media account, especially Twitter, and posted a post saying that about 7,000 cases have been reported and the government is not telling Kenyans the real story on what is happening. Something that the government, through the Ministry of Health, CS for Health Mutahi Kagwe, has come out to dismiss, saying that politicians should stop playing politics with all this issue of coronavirus, and saying that politicians should stick to politics and let the medics handle the medical part of it. And about last week, and you saw Nairobi Senator Johnson Sakaja, together with his family, his children, recording a video of how to fight COVID in the Kenya, using a rap song, saying that the only thing that Kenyans need to do right now is follow the rules that have been put in place by the government, things that I've mentioned, washing your hands with clean water, and so using hand sanitizer when you cannot get, you're not at a place where you can access clean water, and also keeping that distance. So now, that is, if you want to get a hold of that story, read page 19 of the Standard newspaper. Let's cross over to page 2 of the Standard newspaper, and it is a red alert: 600 contacts yet to be traced in a war on deadly virus. And this is the reason as to why, again, the CS for Health, Mutahi Kagwe, asked Kenyans to start using face masks, because the people who have been infected and they're walking, in our streets, in our neighborhoods, they're probably our neighbors, they're probably a family and friends, and you do not know, because the COVID-19 symptoms, they don't just appear immediately. Some take 14 days, some take as much as 6 days, and some probably will start having a cough, others probably not a cough, others probably will start having headache and a bit of some fever. And that is why the CS is saying that it is time that every Kenyan is cautious. When you're boarding that border, you need to be having a face mask. When you're going to the market to buy your grocery, you need to use a face mask. When you're using a public transport vehicle, the matatus, you need to have a face mask. And that is the reason as to why, again, the matatus are now reducing the number of people who are boarding the PSVs as a way of commuting from one point to another. And if you look at the first paragraph of page 2, it says, the person seated next to you in a matatu, standing behind you in a supermarket queue, or your favorite mama mboga could be one of the hundreds of people being sought by government for testing for the novel coronavirus. It could be anyone. And that is why there also, talks about beginning to trace people using their mobile phones. And it also talks about intruding into your privacy, just to try and track the people who are walking out there and they have coronavirus. And when you look at, away from that, and when you look at, I'd like us to go to page 6. The airline industry is celebrating a very important man, a pilot who died because of the work that he was doing when the plane that he was in, the pilot that is with Major Captain Daudi Kibati, who succumbed to COVID-19 at the Nairobi hospital on Wednesday, where he had been admitted since March 29th when he started showing symptoms of the disease. He was in a plane that was carrying Kenyans who are moving out from the US, coming back home. And sadly, during his line of duty, he contracted the virus. He was buried yesterday in a ceremony that only included few people, according to the government regulations when it comes to burial ceremonies that are being conducted in the country. And so yesterday, we even saw some of his colleagues giving him, that respect that he deserved, because he's died a hero. He's died a hero because he was in the line of duty when he contracted this virus. Look at page 6 of the Standard newspaper. To the story that I've been talking about in connection with what ODM leader Raila Odinga talked about, and it is something that the CS for Health passionately talked about.